The rain hit the windshield like thrown gravel when Officer Kline stepped off the curb and into the lane, palm up, commanding the black sedan to stop. His cruiser's light bar washed the wet street in blue and red, strobing across storefront glass and the polished hood like an accusation. The sedan rolled to a halt beside a no park and fire lane sign outside the courthouse annex. The driver's side window lowered halfway. Inside sat a woman alone, mid-40s, hair pinned back tight, coat collar up against the cold. Her face was composed in the way people get when they've had to be composed for a living. Her hands stayed on the wheel at 10 and 2, knuckles pale in the flashing light. Kline leaned down into the opening with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "You can't stop here," he said. "It's posted. You think the sign is decoration?" "I'm dropping off a file," the woman replied. Her voice was calm, unhurried. 2 minutes. Kline's gaze traveled the interior leather, neat stacks of paper on the passenger seat. A slim briefcase. He noticed the courthouse badge clipped inside her coat pocket, half hidden. He hooked his finger at it like he could pull rank off her chest. "Badge doesn't mean you own the curb," he said. "License and registration." She reached slowly for her purse, then paused. "Officer, I'm not refusing," she said. "But I'd like you to tell me why you approached with lights instead of asking me to move along." Kline's smile widened, sharpened. "Because you're in a restricted lane and I'm doing my job. Now, hand it over." She produced her license and registration and held them out through the gap. Kline took them like he was taking something owed. The license read Elena Marlowe, address in the capital. No flashy titles. Just a name. Kline turned the license over and back again as if he expected it to confess. "Elena," he said, drawing out the syllables. "Marlowe." "You work here?" "I'm here for a hearing," she said. Kline glanced toward the annex doors. They were locked after hours, but a security light burned above them. The street was mostly empty. A couple of late commuters hurried under umbrellas, avoiding the mess of flashing lights like it might spread to them. Kline's voice dropped, thickening. "A hearing," he repeated, "at 9 at night. There are emergency motions," she said. "They don't wait for your shift to end." Kline's radio crackled on his shoulder. He ignored it. His attention stayed on her, and on the fact that she was alone, and on how the courthouse behind her felt like a stage he controlled right now. He leaned closer. The smell of rain and brake heat and cheap coffee clung to him. "You know what happens when I catch someone lying to me?" he asked. "I'm not lying," Elena said. Kline lifted his flashlight and pointed it at her face, forcing her to blink. "You're getting mouthy," he said. "Step out of the car." Elena didn't move. For what reason? Kline straightened just enough to let the word land like a slap. "Because I told you to." A passing car slowed, then sped up, driver unwilling to be involved. Elena's breath fogged the inside of the window. She watched Kline's hand rest casually on his holster, not drawn, but displayed. A signal. She unlocked the door and stepped out into the rain. The cold hit her immediately. The streetlight made her coat look nearly black. Her shoes were sensible, polished. No trembling, no pleading, just stillness. Kline circled her like he was inspecting property. "Hands on the hood," he said. Elena's eyes stayed on his. "I will comply," she said. "But I'm asking again, what is the legal basis for ordering me out and detaining me?" Kline exhaled a laugh. "Legal basis. Listen to you." He turned toward his cruiser as if to perform for an invisible audience. "Hear that? We got ourselves a little attorney who thinks she can run the stop." Elena placed her palms on the sedan's hood. Rain slicked the paint under her fingers. She spread her stance slightly for balance. Kline moved behind her. His flashlight beam slid down her spine, over her wrists. "You got any weapons?" he asked. "No." "Any drugs?" "No." "Any reason my K9 should have a chat with your trunk?" Elena's jaw tightened. "This is a courthouse fire lane," she said evenly. "Not a highway stop." There is no probable cause for Kline grabbed her wrist hard enough to jerk her arm outward. "Probable cause is I don't like your tone." Pain flashed across Elena's face for the first time. She inhaled slowly through her nose, controlled. Her eyes flicked toward the annex doors, toward the security camera above them. The lens stared down like a dead eye. Kline saw the glance and misread it as fear. It made him bolder. You people think you can talk your way out of everything, he said. Like the badge in your pocket is armor. It's not a badge, Elena said. It's an access card. Kline's hand tightened, twisting her wrist just enough to make the tendon stand out. Same thing, he said. Same entitlement. He frisked her with rough, unnecessary passes. His hands lingered where they didn't need to. When she flinched, he leaned in and spoke low so the rain could swallow his words. Don't make a scene, he murmured, or I'll give you one. Elena's voice turned colder. You're already making one, she said. That was when Kline's radio crackled again. Unit 12, dispatch said. Status check. Kline pressed the talk button without taking his eyes off Elena. Unit 12, on a stop, he said. Stand by. Then, deliberately, he reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the courthouse card. He held it up to the flashing lights like it was evidence. Let's see, he said. Restricted access. Fancy. He glanced at the name printed on it, then smirked. You people always think you're important. Elena's lips parted, then closed. She swallowed. The restraint wasn't weakness. It was calculation, the kind of restraint that comes from someone who knows what a moment like this becomes later, under oath, frame by frame. Kline tossed the card onto the hood where it stuck in the rain. Turn around, he ordered. Elena turned. Kline's eyes swept her again. You want to keep asking questions? He said. Here's one. How do you think this ends if I say you swung at me? The threat hung in the air, heavier than the rain. A door opened across the street. A security guard stepped out from a side entrance, peering toward the lights. He hesitated, then started walking closer, hand hovering near his radio. Kline noticed him and raised his voice. Ma'am, stop resisting, he barked loudly. Elena froze. Her hands were open, visible. She wasn't resisting anything. Stop resisting, Kline repeated, louder, turning his body so the guard could see only Elena's face and Kline's squared shoulders. Elena spoke clearly, projecting just enough. I am not resisting, she said. Your body camera is recording. Kline's face twitched. A flicker of annoyance, like she'd named something he'd hoped to keep invisible. He tapped his chest where the camera should have been. It wasn't there. The mount was empty. Elena noticed the absence, and her eyes hardened. She didn't say it. She didn't need to. Kline stepped closer. You think you're clever, he hissed, voice low again. You think you can threaten me with paperwork. Elena's gaze shifted, not to him, but to the cruiser's dashboard camera angled toward them, the annex camera above, and the security guard now within earshot. The guard called out, Officer, everything all right? Kline didn't look at him. Yeah, he said quickly. Just handling a non-compliant driver. Elena turned her head slightly. Sir, she said to the guard, I'd like you to note that I was ordered out without probable cause, searched, and threatened. Kline's hand snapped up, grabbing Elena's upper arm, fingers digging in. Shut up, he snapped. The guard stopped, eyes narrowing. Officer, he warned. Kline's face tightened, and in that moment, the performance had to evolve. He needed control back. He needed the guard to see what he wanted him to see. He spun Elena toward the cruiser. You're under arrest, he said, loud enough to fill the street. For what? Elena asked. Obstruction, Kline said. Failure to comply. Disorderly conduct. Elena's breath hitched. Not fear, disbelief. A sharp, brittle thing. Kline pulled out his cuffs. Elena looked down at the metal, then up at him. Officer, she said softly, do not do this. Kline's eyes flared. Or what? Elena's voice remained even, but something in it changed an edge of finality. Or you will not be able to undo what you set in motion. Kline laughed once, harsh. Lady, you're not in charge here. He yanked her wrists behind her back. The cuffs clicked around her skin too tight, biting. Elena's face went pale. Rain streamed down her cheeks like tears that weren't hers. The guard raised his radio. I need a supervisor to the annex fire lane, he said, voice cautious but firm. Possible issue on a stop. Kline's head snapped toward him. Mind your business, he barked. The guard held Kline's gaze. This is courthouse property, he said. It is my business. Kline shoved Elena forward toward the cruiser's rear door. Her shoulder hit the frame. She sucked in a breath, steadying herself. Watch your step, Kline said, mocking. Elena's eyes fluttered briefly, as if she was measuring pain and consequence at the same time. She looked past Kline, toward the annex door, toward the cameras. In the distance, sirens began to rise back up, coming, summoned by Kline's earlier casual call. He wanted witnesses of his choosing. He wanted numbers. A second cruiser pulled up, tires hissing on wet asphalt. Officer Jenna Rourke stepped out, young, face tight with the seriousness of someone still afraid of doing the wrong thing. She looked at Elena in cuffs, then at Kline, then at the guard. "What's going on?" Rourke asked. Kline didn't miss a beat. "Driver was parked in the fire lane," he said. "Got hostile. Refused commands. I'm taking her in." Elena lifted her chin. "Officer," she said to Rourke, "I asked repeatedly for the basis of detention. I was threatened with a false assault allegation. I'd like your name and badge number." Rourke's eyes widened slightly. She glanced at Kline, seeking confirmation, instruction. Kline cut in. "Don't engage," he said. "She's trying to lawyer you." Elena's gaze stayed on Rourke. "Do you see a body camera on him?" she asked, quiet but clear. Rourke's eyes flicked to Kline's chest. Empty mount. Her mouth tightened. Kline stepped between them. "Enough," he snapped. "Open the door." Rourke hesitated half a second too long. Kline's voice turned lethal. "Open the door, Rourke." Rourke moved, opened the cruiser's back door. Kline pushed Elena inside. Elena sat carefully, wrists locked behind her, coat soaked. The plastic seat was cold and unforgiving. She looked out through the rain-spared window at Kline, at Rourke, at the guard. Her eyes didn't beg. They recorded. Kline slammed the door and turned to Rourke. "You see that?" he said. "That's what happens when they think they're above the law." Rourke's voice was small. "What's her name?" Kline waved the license. "Elena Marlowe." Rourke repeated under her breath, as if testing whether she recognized it. The name didn't land for her. "Not yet." Kline headed toward his cruiser's front seat. "Dispatch," he said into his radio. "I'm transporting one to county intake." The guard stepped closer, rain dripping from his cap brim. "Officer," he said, "I'm requesting you wait for a supervisor. This doesn't look right." Kline leaned in close to the guard. "You want to keep your job," he said quietly. The guard's throat worked. His hand tightened on his radio. He didn't back away. Rourke looked between them, trapped in the middle. From inside the back seat, Elena spoke, voice muffled through glass but still audible. "Call the annex clerk," she said to the guard. "Ask for the duty administrator. Tell them Elena Marlowe is being transported unlawfully from the Supreme Court Annex." Kline whirled, face flushing. He yanked open the back door, rain blowing in. "You shut your mouth," he said. Elena looked up at him, eyes steady. "You've already taken my freedom," she said. "You won't take my voice." Kline's hand twitched toward her face, stopping short only because Rourke stood there watching, because the guard stood there watching, because somewhere in the back of his mind he knew the line he was considering crossing could not be walked back. He slammed the door again, harder. Kline climbed into the driver's seat. The engine rumbled. The wipers squealed across the windshield. Rourke stayed standing in the rain, watching him. "Sergeant's on the way," she said. Kline stared forward. "Sergeant can catch up," he said, and threw the cruiser into gear. The tires spit water as the car pulled away from the curb, leaving the guard and Rourke in the flashing residue of light. Inside the cruiser, Elena's head leaned back against the partition. She closed her eyes for a single beat, feeling the cuffs cutting into her wrists, feeling the bruise blooming on her shoulder where she'd hit the doorframe. Then she opened them again. Her voice was quiet, aimed at the cage of air between her and Kline. "There's still time," she said. "Pull over, call your supervisor, release me, document the stop properly." Kline's laugh came from the front seat, bitter. "Document properly," he mocked. "You think I'm scared of your complaint?" Elena's eyes followed the road ahead through the mesh partition. The city blurred in wet neon. "I'm not threatening you," she said. "I'm telling you the truth." Kline's knuckles whitened on the wheel. "Truth is," he said, "I decide what happened." The cruiser turned onto the main boulevard toward the county intake facility. Streetlights passed like metronome beats. Each one made Elena's face flash into view, then disappear again. A new crackle came over the radio. "Unit 12, dispatch said. Supervisor requesting your location." Kline pressed the button hard. En route to intake, he said, I'll advise when clear. Copy, dispatch answered, tone clipped. Supervisor requests you hold for contact. Kline released the button and muttered something under his breath. Elena watched the back of his head, the line of his neck above the collar. She could almost see the arrogance moving under his skin like heat. The cruiser stopped at a red light. Pedestrians waited on the corner, a man with a takeout bag, a woman with a stroller covered in plastic. They glanced at the cruiser, then away. People had learned not to stare too long. Elena leaned forward as much as the cuffs allowed. Her voice sharpened. Officer Kline, she said. He didn't respond. Elena Marlowe, she continued, is the name you're going to see again and again in the next 72 hours, attached to your face, your badge, your complaints, your disciplinary file, and your criminal charges. Kline snapped his head toward the partition. Criminal charges, he scoffed. For what? Doing my job? Elena's eyes stayed locked on him. For unlawful detention, she said. For abuse of authority. For assault. For filing a false report if you continue down that road. Kline's lips curled. You think you're important. The light turned green. He accelerated, harder than necessary. Rain intensified, drumming on the roof. The intake facility appeared ahead, a concrete block washed in harsh white lights, surrounded by chain link and wet asphalt. Kline pulled into the sally port. The gate rolled shut behind them, sealing them in. The sense of isolation tightened like a noose. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed, the smell of disinfectant mixed with old sweat. A booking officer behind glass looked up, bored, then saw Elena in the back and straightened slightly. Kline opened the back door and grabbed Elena's arm, yanking her out. Elena stumbled but caught herself, chin up. She faced the booking officer. I need medical attention for an injury, she said calmly, and I need to speak to a supervisor. Kline shoved her forward. She's fine, he snapped. The booking officer frowned. What's the charge? Kline didn't hesitate. Disorderly. Obstruction. Resisting. Elena's head turned slowly toward him. I did not resist, she said. You know that. Kline leaned close, voice low. Say it again, he whispered. See what happens. The booking officer watched the exchange through the glass with a look that wasn't quite interest and wasn't quite fear. It was calculation. Intake had seen this before. Different faces, same posture. A second officer, older, approached. Sergeant Miles Hargrove. Broad shoulders, tired eyes, the posture of a man who'd spent too long cleaning up other people's messes. His gaze went from Kline to Elena to the cuffs. Kline, Hargrove said. Why didn't you hold for contact? Kline's jaw worked. I had a combative subject, he said. I wasn't going to stand around. Hargrove stepped closer to Elena. Ma'am, he said, tone measured. What's your name? Elena Marlowe, she answered. Hargrove blinked once, a small involuntary reaction. He recovered fast, but it was there. Kline saw it. His confidence faltered for the first time. Sarge, he said quickly. She's trying to intimidate. Hargrove didn't look at Kline. He looked at Elena. Do you have identification? Elena nodded slightly, indicating her coat pocket. He took it, she said. It's in his hand. Hargrove turned his head. Kline. Kline held up the license like a shield. Here, he said, too quickly, and handed it over. Hargrove read the name. His face tightened. Not with anger yet. With recognition that turned the air heavy. He looked up at Elena again. Ma'am, he said quietly. Are you Judge Marlowe? Elena's gaze didn't change. Justice Marlowe, she corrected softly. The fluorescent lights seemed to buzz louder. The booking officer behind glass leaned forward, eyes widening. A clerk at a nearby desk froze mid-keystroke. Kline stared at Hargrove like he'd been betrayed. No, he said. No, that's. Hargrove held up a hand to silence him without even looking. He focused on Elena. Why were you parked in the fire lane? I was delivering an emergency motion to the duty administrator, Elena said. I was stopped before I could enter. I complied. I asked for the legal basis. I was searched. I was threatened. I was arrested. Hargrove's throat worked. He turned slowly toward Kline. Where is your body camera footage? Kline's mouth opened, then closed. It malfunctioned, he said. Hargrove's eyes narrowed. It was malfunctioning at the exact moment you escalated with a Supreme Court justice on courthouse property. Kline's face reddened. Sarge, she was disrespectful. She was Hargrove stepped closer. Remove the cuffs, he said. Kline stiffened. Sarge, remove the cuffs, Hargrove repeated, each word spaced like a hammer strike. Kline didn't move. His pride held him in place like iron. Hargrove's voice dropped. Now. Rourke entered the intake area, reins still on her hair, breath shallow. She followed. Her eyes found Elena, then Hargrove, then Kline. She understood instantly that something had shifted, something irreparable. Kline finally reached for the key. His fingers fumbled once. Elena held her wrist steady as the cuffs came off. Red marks circled her skin. The bruise on her shoulder darkened under the fluorescent light. Hargrove looked at the marks, and the tiredness in his eyes turned into something sharper. He turned to the booking officer. "Do not process this," he said. "Get medical staff. Photograph her injuries. Start an incident report." Kline's voice rose. "Sarge, what the hell? You're taking her side?" Hargrove's stare landed on him like a verdict. "I'm taking the side of procedure," he said, "and the side of reality." Elena flexed her fingers slowly, pain radiating. "Sergeant," she said, voice steady, "I want every camera angle preserved. The courthouse annex camera, your cruiser dash camera, intake camera, every radio transmission, every GPS log." Hargrove nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." Kline stepped forward, panic cracking through his anger. "This is ridiculous," he said. She's trying to ruin me." Elena's gaze met his. It was not triumphant. It was final. "You did that when you decided you could write the truth," she said. Hargrove lifted his radio. "Internal affairs," he said into it. "I need an on-call investigator to county intake. Now. Also notify the district attorney's duty line. Possible unlawful arrest and assault by officer." Kline's face went slack. "Sarge," he said, voice dropping. "Come on. You know me." Hargrove didn't soften. "I know your record," he said, "and I know you just made it worse." Rourke stood rigid, eyes glossy. She looked at Elena, then at Kline as if realizing she'd been standing too close to a fire she didn't start, but could be burned by. Elena turned slightly toward Rourke. "Officer," she said, "you were present. You saw the lack of camera. You heard his statements. You have a choice in what you write tonight." Rourke swallowed hard. "Yes, ma'am," she whispered. Kline spun on Rourke. "Don't," he warned, voice tight. "Don't you dare," Hargrove stepped in. "Kline," he said, "you're done talking." The intake door opened again. Two men in suits entered with rain on their shoulders, badges clipped to their belts. "Internal affairs." Their eyes swept the room, taking inventory like accountants of ruin. Behind them came a woman with a prosecutor's posture. Assistant District Attorney Nia Patel, duty line called in. Her gaze went straight to Elena's wrists. "Justice Marlowe," Patel said, controlled but alarmed. Elena nodded. "Miss Patel," she replied. "Thank you for coming quickly." Kline's mouth dropped open. He stared at Elena like she'd turned into a ghost from a story meant to scare bad cops into behaving. Patel's eyes moved to Hargrove. "Sergeant," she said, "I want Kline separated. Now. No more contact with the complainant." Hargrove nodded. "Rourke," he said, "take Officer Kline to interview room 2. Stay with him. Do not let him access his phone." Kline's head snapped up. "My phone?" he barked. "You can't." Patel's voice sliced through. "You were acting under color of law," she said. "Your communications are now evidence." Kline's face contorted. "This is a setup." Elena watched him, shoulders squared despite the pain. "It isn't," she said. "It's consequence." Roar approached Kline, hands trembling slightly. "Officer," she said, trying to keep her voice professional, "come with me." Kline looked at her, disbelief turning into contempt. "You're siding with her?" Rourke's eyes flicked to Elena's bruised wrist, then back to Kline. "I'm siding with what happened," she said, voice thin but real. Kline jerked his arm away, then realized everyone was watching. He forced himself to walk, but his shoulders hunched, his swagger gone. The sound of his boots echoed down the hall like a countdown. In the intake area, a nurse arrived with a camera and gloves. She photographed Elena's wrists, her shoulder. Elena held still, face composed, but her breathing deepened when the nurse touched the bruise. Patel watched, jaw tight. "Justice Marlowe," she said quietly. "Do you want immediate charges filed tonight?" Elena's eyes didn't leave the camera lens. "I want the truth preserved tonight," she said. "Charges follow truth." The internal affairs investigator, a man with a shaved head and a voice like sandpaper, opened a notebook. "Justice," he said. "Please describe the initial contact." Elena spoke without embellishment. "Time, location, commands, the absence of the body camera, the threat, the false stop resisting claim shouted for a witness, the grip on her wrist, the shove into the cruiser. Each fact landed with the weight of something that would live beyond this room." Hargrove listened, face hardening. He'd heard complaints, he'd seen bruises, but hearing it from someone who understood the law at its deepest level, someone who had written opinions that shaped lives, made it impossible to dismiss as he said, she said. Patel's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then looked up. "Chief is aware," she said. "So is the sheriff, and the courthouse administrator is pulling the annex footage." Elena nodded once. "Good," she said. Outside, rain continued to fall. Inside, the machinery of accountability, slow, often avoided, had been forced into motion by a single mistake Kline had believed he could bury. In interview room 2, Kline sat under a camera, hands clasped, eyes darting like a trapped animal. Rourke stood near the door, posture stiff. He tried to speak casually, to reclaim his voice. "This is insane," he said. "She's going to call our friends. That's what they do. They circle up." Rourke didn't respond. Kline leaned forward. "Rourke," he said, softer. "You know how this works. You write it right. We both go home." Rourke's throat tightened. She stared at the table, then at the camera in the corner. "I can't," she said. Kline's eyes narrowed. "You can," he insisted. "You have to. We're blue. We protect our own." Rourke finally looked at him. Her eyes were wet, but her voice steadied. "You didn't protect anyone," she said. "You heard someone because you could." Kline's face twisted. "She's not someone," he spat. "She's a judge." Rourke's voice dropped. "She's a person," she said. Kline's jaw clenched. He looked away, fury simmering into fear. Back in the intake area, the annex footage arrived on a monitor. Grainy, angled from above but clear enough. It showed Kline stepping into the lane with lights. Elena's compliance. The wrist grab. The exaggerated, "Stop resisting," shouted to perform innocence. The shove into the cruiser. The room went silent as the video played. Patel watched without blinking. The internal affairs investigator paused the footage at the moment Kline twisted Elena's wrist. "That," he said, voice flat, "is not standard." Hargrove's hands curled into fists. "No," he said. "It's not." Elena watched the video like she was watching someone else, but her eyes tightened at the moment her shoulder hit the doorframe. Her breath caught, then steadied again. Postle turned to the investigator. "I want an arrest warrant," she said. "Tonight." The investigator nodded slowly. "We can place him in custody now," he said. "We have probable cause." Hargrove's jaw worked. "He's one of mine," he said, and the words tasted bitter. "But he's not leaving this building." When they entered interview room 2, Kline rose instinctively, trying to regain his stature. Then he saw Patel. He saw the internal affairs badge. He saw Hargrove's face. The room shrank around him. "What is this?" Kline demanded. "Am I being questioned? I want union rep." Patel's voice was calm, almost gentle. "You being arrested," she said, "for unlawful restraint, official misconduct, and assault." Kline's face strained. "No," he said. "No, this is political. This is because of what you did," Patel said, cutting him off. Internal Affairs stepped forward with cuffs. The metal made a soft sound in the sterile air. Kline's eyes flicked to Rourke. "You," he hissed. "You did this." Rourke didn't move. Her breathing was shallow. "You did," she said. Kline backed away until his hips hit the table. He swallowed hard, voice cracking. "I didn't mean she was disrespectful. She was." Hargrove leaned in, voice low and dangerous. "You don't get to punish disrespect with violence," he said. You don't get to invent crimes because your ego got bruised. Kline's eyes flashed with desperation. Sarge, please, he whispered. Don't do this. Hargrove's expression didn't change. I'm not, he said. You did. The cuffs closed around Kline's wrists in front of him. Not too tight. Proper. Professional. The way it was supposed to be. The contrast made it crueler. Kline stared down at the metal like it was foreign. His breath came fast, shallow. The camera in the corner recorded it all. Word spread faster than rainwater down a gutter. By morning, the department's quiet accommodations, missed paperwork, friendly warnings, delayed discipline, were collapsing under the weight of footage and a name the system couldn't ignore. The courthouse annex camera wasn't the only one. A passing bus had captured a sliver of the stop through its own interior camera. A storefront across the street had caught Kline's cruiser lights and the shape of a woman shoved into the back seat. The security guard's radio call was logged. Dispatch recordings preserved Kline, ignoring the supervisor's order to hold. Each piece of evidence tightened like a net. Internal affairs widened the scope within hours. Kline's prior arrests were flagged for review, beginning with the ones where suspects alleged excessive force, and the reports read like copy-paste certainty. Patterns surfaced. The same phrasing. The same subject became combative. The same convenient absence of camera footage, noted as malfunction or, quote, forgotten at station. Patel convened a rapid task force with state investigators. A judge's unlawful arrest on courthouse property forced jurisdictional doors open that stayed closed for everyone else. By noon, 2 more officers were pulled from patrol pending investigation. One had signed off on Kline's reports without verifying footage. Another had logged equipment checks that never happened. The armory inventory revealed missing body camera units checked out and never returned, then replaced quietly. Supervisors who'd shrugged at complaints were suddenly reading their own emails on printed paper in front of attorneys. The fallout spilled beyond Kline like contaminated water. At the courthouse, staff had witnessed small humiliations at the hands of uniformed men, snide jokes, lingering touches. Threats whispered in corridors began to speak. They had names now. They had an opening. They had a sense that silence might finally cost more than talking. Elena Marlowe did not give interviews. She did not stand on courthouse steps for cameras. She did what she'd always done. She wrote. Within 48 hours, a sealed memorandum went to the state's Judicial Conduct Commission and to the Attorney General's office. Not as a victim's plea, but as a documented account with attached exhibits, timestamps, footage, photographs, dispatch logs, and a request for systemic review of courthouse area policing practices. The request was not emotional. It was surgical. The machinery responded in kind. A special prosecutor was appointed to avoid conflicts. Grand jury subpoenas went out. Officers were compelled to turn over phones. Union representatives arrived with tense smiles that couldn't hide their fear of the word pattern. Kline sat in a holding cell, no longer insulated by his badge. The air smelled of bleach and stale sweat, the same smell he'd watched others swallow with humiliation. Now it filled his mouth when he breathed. He kept replaying the moment Hargrove asked, "Are you Judge Marlowe?" as if his life had split there. A clean fracture. He told himself he'd been unlucky. He told himself anyone could have made a mistake. But the footage did not show a mistake. It showed intention. The arraignment came fast because the state wanted the first reckoning visible. The courtroom was packed, not with cheering crowds, but with quiet-bodied journalists, clerks, officers in plain clothes, community members who had learned to sit through legal pain without expecting comfort. The atmosphere was thick, restrained, as if everyone understood that justice in a courtroom didn't need volume to be devastating. Kline stood at the defense table in a suit that didn't fit right, wrists free but shoulders chained by attention. His lawyer whispered, urgent, sweat shining at his temples. Across the aisle, the special prosecutor rose. Her voice was steady, controlled, each word placed like a brick. She described the stop, the lack of cause, the excessive force, the false statements, the attempt to manufacture resistance, the transport against a supervisor's directive, the injuries documented at intake. The annex footage played for the court. The judge, another justice, older, expression carved from experience, watched without blinking. When the video paused on the wrist twist, the judge's mouth tightened almost imperceptibly. The defense tried to frame it as confusion, stress, an officer doing his job in uncertain circumstances. The prosecutor didn't raise her voice. She let the contradiction speak. Uncertain circumstances, she repeated and gestured to the screen. This is certainty. This is control. This is punishment. Kline's jaw clenched. His knee bounced under the table. He stared straight ahead as if the air in front of him could become a wall. When the judge spoke, the room held its breath. Bail is denied, the judge said. The court finds clear and convincing evidence of abuse of authority, risk of witness intimidation, and a pattern that is actively under investigation. The defendant will be remanded. Kline's head jerked up. No, he blurted before his lawyer could stop him. The judge's eyes fixed on him. Yes, she said simply. Two court deputies approached. Their hands were firm, professional, not cruel. They guided Kline's arms behind his back. The sound of cuffs closing in a courtroom carried differently than on a street. It wasn't noise, it was language. Kline looked around, searching for a friendly face, a sympathetic glance, anything that would tell him he still belonged somewhere. He found Rourke sitting in the back row, not in uniform, face pale, eyes locked on him. She did not look away. She did not offer comfort. She looked like someone watching a door close and knowing she'd never step through it again. Kline's lips parted. He tried to speak, but the deputies turned him toward the exit. His shoes squeaked on the polished floor as he was led out past rows of silent people. No one cheered. No one needed to. Outside the courtroom, the systemic reckoning moved like a storm front. Investigators served warrants. Officers were suspended. A lieutenant resigned by sunset. The department announced new body camera policies with language so urgent it betrayed how long they'd known the old ones were failing. Community leaders demanded oversight boards with teeth. The Attorney General's office opened a hotline for complaints related to courthouse area stops. Calls flooded in within hours. Names and dates and bruises people had held in their bodies. Like secrets came spilling out. Every new report widened the crater. For the first time in years, the department's internal politics couldn't smother it. The victim's identity wasn't the reason accountability finally arrived, but it was the lever that cracked the system's sealed lid. Once open, the stink couldn't be contained. In a smaller, quieter courtroom a week later, Elena Marlowe stood to give a statement. Not as a celebrity, not as a headline, but as a citizen injured by an officer who thought law was his personal weapon. She wore a dark suit. Her shoulder bruise had yellowed around the edges, fading slowly. Her wrists still bore faint marks like thin bracelets of memory. She did not dramatize. She did not plead. She spoke as if placing facts into a record that would outlast everyone in the room. When the officer threatened to say, "I swung at him," she said, voice level, he was not improvising. He was rehearsing. That threat only words that the system is prepared to believe him without evidence. That is what must change. The judge listened, chin slightly lowered, as if absorbing each word with gravity. Kline sat at the defense table again, eyes sunken, hair cut shorter now, the swagger erased. He stared at his hands, then at Elena, then away, as if her existence was unbearable proof. The prosecutor presented plea terms. Kline would plead guilty to official misconduct and unlawful restraint. Assault would be dismissed only because the state wanted a guaranteed conviction and cooperation against other officers implicated in the pattern. Kline's lawyer whispered frantically. Kline's face twitched with shame and anger, but his choices had narrowed to a corridor with no exits. He stood when ordered, his voice shook. Guilty, he said. The word fell into the courtroom and stayed there. The judge's sentence was measured, formal, merciless in its clarity. Time in state prison. Permanent decertification. Loss of pension. A lifetime ban from law enforcement employment. A public record that would follow his name like a shadow. When the judge finished, she paused, eyes on Kline. Authority is borrowed, she said, and you treat it as owned. Kline's breath hitched. He looked like a man trying to swallow something too large. As deputies led him away, his shoulders sagged, not from the weight of the cuffs, but from the sudden absence of the illusion that had protected him. In the weeks that followed, the courthouse annex changed, not with speeches, but with small, visible shifts. New cameras installed. New signage. New protocols requiring supervisor review for any arrest on courthouse grounds. Officers assigned there were rotated, monitored, audited. Clerks walked their cars with a little less fear in their posture. The security guard who'd called for a supervisor kept his job. He received a formal commendation, handed to him in a quiet office without cameras, his hands trembling as he accepted it. Rourke filed her statement. It was thorough, it was honest. It cost her friendships. It cost her invitations. It bought her sleep. Elena returned to the bench. Her work did not slow. The case did not become her identity. It became something recorded, addressed, closed. On a gray morning, months later, the annex fire lane sat empty under winter light. A new officer stood near the curb, posture neutral, watching traffic with the quiet alertness of someone who understood eyes were on him even when no one seemed to be looking. A black sedan rolled up briefly, stopped for the span of a heartbeat, then moved along without incident. The city continued. Rain became snow. Headlines faded, but in the files of internal affairs and court records, in training rooms where new recruits were forced to watch footage that made their stomachs tighten, the truth remained. Power had been used like a fist in the dark, and then it had been dragged into the light, where it could be named, measured, and taken away.